We'll start recording. I don't know. Can you guys see the recording sign?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's start the meeting. My name is Maria. I am the Director of Alumni Relations here at TSC, and I'm going to be moderating today's meeting. I would like to welcome all of you to our wonderful panel. Today we have a very diverse group of alumni who are here to answer all of your questions and give you tips on how to survive at USC as well as what to do after your graduation. Today's panel is going to be a little bit different than the ones we had before. I decided to include transfer students, students who did masters at USC, as well as a non-transfer student so that we can see the USC experience from different angles. All right, so we're going to start with the introduction of our wonderful panelists. Then we'll go into the questions. Since this event is not in person and our panelists don't really see each other in one room, I'm going to post the names of the panelists in the chat. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the same order to avoid confusion. Let's see here. Let's start with Jimmy.
All right, I'll go ahead and get started. Well, it's very exciting to see you all. My name is Jimmy Ko. I think a lot of you know that I created this club, and this is actually the first year we've ever had panelists who I didn't recognize, which was really exciting because usually I'm like asking all my friends for favors to make it on here to come to the event. So this is really exciting that it's kind of expanding like this. But my year of graduation, I graduated in 2017 in the Marshall School of Business Administration. And right now, I recently switched banks. I used to work at Wells Fargo as an analyst, and I'm pretty much doing the same thing at another bank here in Irvine. It's called Commerce West Bank.
Hi everyone, my name is Brianna Wallace and I graduated last year, so class of 2019. I studied business administration with a dance minor and entrepreneurship emphasis, and I now work in the beauty industry as a brand manager for a professional hair product company.
Cool, nice to meet you, Brianna. I'm Natan Benchamal, electrical and computer engineering. I was trying to get into like military technology, that sort of stuff. I interned at Raytheon for a couple of years while I was at USC, but recently kind of pivoted to work on a startup with a close friend. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on lately.
Hi everyone, I just want to start off and say thank you for having me. I'm happy to share my wisdom with you guys. So I'm Rita. I graduated USC in 2017 from the Marshall School of Business with an emphasis of finance. I know you guys we don't really have emphasis, but that's kind of what my core work was geared towards. I was a financial analyst for about 2.5 years. I actually recently just converted to a data engineer. And for those who don't know what a data engineer is, I am essentially a software engineer. But rather than working on the product, I worked on our company's data lake. And if you don't know what a data lake is, it is what it sounds like. It's a large repository of my company's data.
Well, hello, my name is Freddie Coupe-Names. We have a great set of panels that I see are here, awesome. So I graduated from USC in 2017 with my master's in public administration online. So you're experiencing the virtual world right now. I did my master's online completely while working full time. So if you have any questions on living the virtual world and working and studying online, you know, ask me any questions and all questions. I also did a graduate certificate with City County Management. I recognize some of the fellow panelists because of the Young Alumni Committee that we're part of, but also of other professional networking groups such as MMASC, where I met Ani, and for a short period of time, we were both working for the same city. Well, she's still working in Beverly Hills. I left Beverly Hills and I work currently in the city of Los Angeles for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment as a project coordinator, managing 8 neighborhood councils out of 99 neighborhood councils. And so if you don't know what a neighborhood council is, they are a small entity within the city of Los Angeles that manage public funds to do beautification projects, offer grants to nonprofits, and also improve their community within their boundaries. So I managed their help them guide them through their agenda and answer any and all questions, connecting them with the city attorney or the city clerk, and trying to get them to that successful yes in order to bypass any bureaucracy or red tape in order to best affect their neighborhood. That's it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ani Kashishian. I'm very happy to be here with you. I graduated SC in 2015 with my master's in economics from Dornsife, and I'm really excited to be here. And I work pretty closely with the Women in Economics Association at USC, so I've had the privilege of being on one of their panelists as well. So I am a budget and financial analyst. I started off at the city as a graduate intern and worked my way up. I promoted several times within the organization, and here I am today as a budget and financial analyst. I get to work on the city budget. I pretty much work on the taxes, fees, and charges that we adjust annually, as well as the capital improvement projects. So I can go into that later, but I'm also pretty active in the community. I'm pretty active as far as kind of in the government world. So I'm a regional co-chair for MMASC. So any questions you have, I encourage you to ask them, and I can go into more details about those associations if need be. And I should also mention, sorry, one other thing I should add. I did go to SC pretty much full time and worked full time, so it is possible. And unlike Freddie, I actually had to drive down there a couple of times during the day sometimes, so it was brutal. And I wish we had that the virtual classes.
All right, well, my name's Enya. I'm really excited to be here. I graduated in 2017 or not 2017, 2019. I don't even know what day it is anymore. 2019 with a Bachelor of Arts in Choral Music. I'm currently a middle school teacher, so hence why I have 0 brain cells left. So I've been dealing with small children. I guess they're kind of big, but children all day. So I'm very excited to be here and talk to adults. So yeah, anything about the creative side. I know we have a lot of businessy, a couple other creative people, but definitely any question about music, theater, those kind of things can help you out. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much for your introductions. It's wonderful meeting all of you, and thank you for being with us today. I'll start asking the questions. So for those of you who have questions during the meeting, please go ahead and unmute yourself at any time to ask your question to the panelists that you had a question to. All right, let's start with the first question. And the first question is, what was your favorite class, professor, or academic experience at SC? And we could pretty much go with the same order if you guys don't mind. And if you don't have something to say about a specific or a certain question, you can just pass.
Yeah, sure. Mine's pretty quick. I took an entrepreneurial finance course at USC. It was really interesting just because, you know, it wasn't necessarily a traditional finance looking at multi-million-dollar corporations. It was more about, you know, the grassroots, past startup, but also how to get your funding, how to present to VCs, angel investors, stuff like that. And I don't think that's really talked about enough in, you know, both in media and just, you know, finance in general. So that was probably my most interesting.
So I have 2. Since I did have a minor, I'll throw in an extra one. So my favorite class was my Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship class for my emphasis with Professor Ivan Niku. And my goal is to run my own fashion company in the future, and learning about what it really takes and the building the foundation of a business and a lot of the pitfalls that you can fall into when you're building something from the ground up was super insightful and allowed me to really think about what's at stake in running a business and bringing something to the table. And then I also enjoyed my Bollywood class for my minors. So that was offered my sophomore year. I like rearranged my schedule so that I could be one of the first students in the first class. And I loved my professor. She has her own dance company that's performed at Disney, has choreography in New Girl, and she's just amazing. And I performed for 6 years during my junior high and high school time and traveled and competed. And so it was really nice to be able to incorporate that into my college experience as well.
Awesome. So I studied engineering. A lot of my favorite courses were the ones that were hands-on. We have a really cool capstone project where we were basically grouped up with a couple marketing students, a design student, and a couple engineering students, and we had to basically come up with a product from A to Z, build a prototype. That was a great experience. It was super fun. There were a couple other similar classes like that allowed us to like get hands-on, basically culminated in some sort of final project that brought together all the various, I guess, skills or tools that you kind of learned throughout the semester. Those were cool. Besides for engineering, I actually took a really cool class. It's called, I think it's Jewish History 100. I don't even remember what it is. It's with this guy. His name is Garraway. I highly recommend it. You do not need to be Jewish to take it. It was cool for me because I grew up in a more like religious Jewish background where we kind of took things at face value. And the way that he approached Jewish history was like from a strictly, it's like scientific historical point of view. So he went through, various, through like various, I guess, historical artifacts and stuff, and brought a really cool perspective to a history that I had learned growing up. So I really, really treasured that experience. And he's a great teacher. Would talk with him for hours in office hours and stuff.
So my favorite experience or my favorite professor was Professor Vishal Gupta. So for the business students, sorry for everyone else, he teaches, I don't know the exact name of the class, but it's BUAD 425. And I think that's more of a senior class for those who have already graduated, but I think that he was just an amazing educator and professor, and he really cares for his students. And I felt like when I was speaking to him, and I never had a real connection with the professor, I'm kind of just not really that type of person. But I felt like I was actually able to open up with him about my interviews that I was doing, things that were happening in my life, and just little things like that. And I felt like he actually genuinely cared about my well-being, other than just being, oh, I'm your professor and that's all I care about. His name is Vishal Gupta. I can send it to you after I finish speaking. I think he's great. The class is very short. I don't think it's an entire semester, but I highly recommend him. Or maybe you can find another class that he's teaching, but I think he's great. He's actually the reason why I ended up switching my career from finance to data science. So I really, really recommend that. One of the best experiences I've ever had in my academic career, actually.
All right, so online, as I did in my master's, the class would be PPD 540, which is the Fundamentals of Public Administration. I noticed that there was a difference between the online and on-campus courses, and it was taught by our professor, Dr. Dora Kingsley-Vertington, which I actually made her as my screensaver for my phone. I survived PPD 540, which I used as a little digital sticker for our team, for our class, because it was the hardest class. It was a make it or break it class that had us reading over 300 pages a week and doing an analysis. And this was doing an analysis on Twitter with 140 characters off of a news article. So you can't do a summary. You had to analyze a whole article on current events. And that was at least a weekly assignment plus your essay every week. And that course itself, I would say that professor and that course tied together brought to everyone that entered the program the aspect that, look, you're going to be given a lot of reading when you go to the master's program, but how can you succinctly go through a thick literature and extrapolate enough information in order to make a cogent argument or an analysis on the facts? And that led us to the project during the time I was taking my master's, the Ebola crisis was happening. So we were constantly evaluating the CDC and the director on their implementation of certain policies. Sorry, it feels like with the pandemic, with COVID-19 and the Ebola, there was some, there was some 2020 hindsight that we could have applied if they listened to some of our advice. But other than that, that professor, Dr. Dora, you might have seen her on Instagram giving a talk on current events. She is very knowledgeable when it comes to politics and social media. So if you are interested in politics or government and its interaction with social media, she'd be the professor to at least get to know a little bit more, other than Professor Juliet Musso, who teaches the finance side for the master's program on campus and online. And those two professors I would highly recommend.
Okay, so my favorite classes were, I think, econometrics, and so econometrics, macroeconomics, and policy and econ. And the professor teaching econometrics is, she still teaches there. Her name is Dr. Narek Ratika. The professor teaching macroeconomics, I believe, is Shinichi Sakata, and he should still be there. And the professor that was teaching at the time, the policy and econ, that professor is Dr. Marlowe. She's actually a city manager now. And that was exciting for me because I actually got to work with somebody that I could potentially work for in the future. And I think that one of the greatest things about SC is we hire such great professors, and they're in these fields that you can potentially work in. So I think one of the things that I want to mention is definitely use your office hours, create those connections with the professors. So down the line, you have like references, first of all. So if you need a good reference, or if you want somebody to look over your work, you have that relationship that's already established. So it's going to be pretty easy. And add them on LinkedIn. So that's another thing I want to mention. I highly recommend it. Keep in touch with them, because if it wasn't for me adding some of my professors on Facebook and LinkedIn and some of the other professional sites, I mean, social media sites, you wouldn't be able to connect with them and have like the opportunities that it's just going to open so many more doors for you. So I mean, econometrics is very like, unless you like math, finance, statistics, you're not going to love the class, but it's extremely challenging. And like Freddie said, the fact that he can say I survived, I kind of want to have a sticker that says I've survived econometrics. So very challenging class, but very much worth it. And the professor was just amazing, and she walked us through certain things, and she knew it was very challenging. So that kind of that speaks volumes. She is a UCLA grad, so I don't know. I think she's converted over the years. She's now a SC fan for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, as we know, I was a music major, so obviously one of my favorite classes was concert choir with Dr. Grasses. He is absolutely fantastic. If you didn't know, USC has 5 choirs, 3 non-audition, meaning anyone can join, even if you think you can't sing, or if you can't read music, you can join. And then they have 2 auditioned ensembles, the chamber singers and then concert choir. I love Dr. Grasses. He is a crazy Venezuelan man, and I just adore him. Absolutely great. Also, another class that I took that actually was a grad class, but I took in my 2nd semester of transferring, was with Dr. Sparks, who was another one of the choral faculty. And she taught this hymnology class, and at the time I had a church job, so it was really helpful for someone who did not grow up going to church. It was really good to learn about all of the things I needed to know. So it's good that I can take that into my career as we go along. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll go to the next question. But before I ask the question, I would like to tell everyone that if you have a question and you don't want to talk at the moment, you can also send me the question in like private message and I'll ask it. All right, next question is, if you were to go back to USC years, what advice would you give to yourself?
Assuming we're going in the same order, I'll try to be quick. So I think the biggest thing is probably not to take things too seriously. Just because, you know, coming as a transfer, you have limited time, you want to make the most of everything, you want to try to maximize your time as much as possible, and sometimes you might get upset if you can't really do that, but just kind of relax. But at the same time, I mean, you should be obviously working for your goals, right? So I'm someone that's very strict on myself, so relaxing was definitely something I had an issue of. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
I would say mine comes down to breathe, expand, and cherish. I definitely, like, I came in knowing what I wanted to accomplish at USC. I've known I wanted to run a company since I was 12. I know I wanted to study business. I wanted to get involved with a business org, something for fashion, something for dance, a Christian community, and one other thing in excess. And like, I checked off all those boxes, but definitely that can lead, you know, to overextending yourself. So I would, you know, go back and maybe just breathe through some of those things, and then also just really cherish the time and the moments, because your 1, 2, 3, 4 years at USC or any school, that is the only time you're going to be in a space like that. And I think what I didn't realize and many grads don't realize is that is probably one of the fewest times where the most amount of your friends and closest friends are going to be all in one place in close proximity. And now everyone is all over the place. So being able to just cherish that I could go down the hall and knock on someone's door, or I could meet up in the middle of campus and just easily see the people that I really cared about in one place, and being able to just soak that in, because it won't happen again like that, most likely in any other part of your life.
Nice. Yeah, I'd say four things. I mean, there's plenty more, but the four would be invest in relationships. Like, the people that you meet are probably going to be the people who you end up connecting with somehow randomly later on down the line. Like, I would say the people you meet are far more important than the classes that you take or the grades that you get. I'd say try as many different things as you can. Get out there, try fencing, try singing, try dancing, try salsa, try whatever you want. And like, this is probably one of the biggest opportunities for you in your life to just try things and figure out what you actually like and what you don't like. If you think you don't like something, confirm it by trying it. I'd say use this opportunity to make mistakes. Once you graduate and you have a real job, you can't really make mistakes. Like, I mean, you can, but there are real consequences. Like, if you're working for the city and you're in charge of their finances and you make a mistake, you accidentally bump the decimal 2 spots to the left, that's a big mistake. If you're a preschool teacher or a middle school teacher, you know, and I don't know, like, you accidentally give a kid a bad grade, like, I mean, sure, it's correctable, or whatever the mistake is, like, there are real consequences. You know, if you mistreat a kid, like, that kid's going to go home and they're going to remember that, you know. So take the opportunity to make mistakes. Like, you're in a bubble, you're in a system that's built to allow you to try things. And following up on that note, I'd say, like, try to develop a habit of walking through doors that are open. Like, I've seen so many people who, like, whether like had an opportunity to like step into leadership role at an organization, at a club, in a class project, whatever it is. And I've seen so many times people say, oh, you know, I don't know if I'm qualified. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if people are going to listen to me. I don't know if, like, I'm the right person. Just, like, develop a habit of walking through the door and, like, and seeing what's on the other side. And again, like, you're in this system that's built to allow you to make mistakes. Like, you can go and get funding from the school for any organization, a couple $1,000, try something out, burn through those thousands of dollars, and there's going to be, like, no real consequences as long as, like, you know, no one gets hurt. Yeah, just take advantage of it. Have a good time.
I have so many things I could tell myself not to do, but I'm gonna keep it short. One, I wish I learned to work smarter, not harder. I felt like, I come from a family, they're immigrants and, they're always like, just work hard and everything will, kind of fall into place. But it's not always the case as you kind of grow up. It's really about, you have so many hours in a day to do something. You got to work smarter. You work harder. You can spend doing something for 50 hours, but if you can cut it down and work smarter and do it in 30, like, why wouldn't you, right? I wish I knew that in college. And there was just certain things that I was just like, I wish I just cut my losses and just moved forward versus like trying to keep going at it all the time. Another one I wish, being a transfer student, you only have 2 years, and those 2 years go by quick. They're like a blink of an eye. And I wish I wasn't so tunnel vision. I was like, I just want to graduate, stop paying USC tuition, and just move on with my life. You know what I mean? But I actually wish I took the time and was like, try different things and try to find myself. Because as you do get older and you start working, you don't have that time. Like if I decide to go find myself, I have to, there's an opportunity cost. I don't, I can quit my job, I can travel around the world, or, I have bills, but I still have bills to pay. You don't have that chance as you do and as you're in college. So I wish I just wasn't so, I would go back and tell myself, like, snap out of it. Don't be so tunnel vision. Just, there's so many things to do and so many things to focus on than just graduating on time, getting the job, and, doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. And that's, I'm going to cheat. I have a third thing. Like, there's this idea of where I guess in college I thought I was supposed to be a certain way and I had to be at a certain timeline like everyone else and all my peers. That's bullshit. Sorry for swearing, but you don't need to be at a certain timeline. You don't need to be at a certain way. You can be wherever you want to be. And I wish I could go back in time and tell myself that, because at the end of the day, like, it all works out kind of in the end. So that's kind of my 3 things. And there's more if you are ever curious about my reminiscing of my regrets in life, I guess.
All right, so far, a lot of great advice has been said. I would definitely add, know your strengths and weaknesses. By that, I mean, know what you're good at and what you're not good at, because what you're good at, try to know that you're just keep improving on that, because what you're not good at, when you're working in teams, figure out that what you're not good at, those other team members that are good at those weaknesses can supplement it. So when you're working in a team effort, all those gaps are filled in. And because I did my master's online, and you guys are going to be living an online world for possibly this year and next year, the biggest thing I'd have to say, form bonds. When I was online, it became a little bit isolating. So what we did was we did digital brunches, and you got to know that our master's program had at least 4 different time zones spread across. So when we worked on projects, we had to collaborate on a Google Doc to figure out how we're going to do an essay together. And we figured out, okay, who's doing what work, and create, a taskmaster list. But after that, we also create a schedule so we can just talk not about work, not about school, but just about life. And whether drinking water or drinking cranberry juice, just having a conversation, just, get to know each other, forming that bond, like maybe the digital homecoming coming up right now. I would highly recommend establishing those partnerships, because you want to at least keep that bond going until you can get back on campus and then do those in-person bonds through tailgating and the like. Since we're transfers, and just like the master's program, it's a short time period to get to know each other. Take that time to do it. And another advice is don't take yourself too seriously. There's going to be a lot of mistakes to be made, but as long as you learn from it and you can grow from it, take it under your belt as something that you can move forward or build upon. Because surprisingly not, when you get interviewed, they want to know what mistakes you made. They want to know, how did you rebound or recover from it? How did you pivot? What was your reaction? Those are those moments that are going to help shape your story as you network towards other occupations and other industries. Because that right now we're in a global pandemic. I'm sorry to say it, but what did you do during this time? How did you recover? How did you make the worst situation the best? how did you flip the script? If you watch Cobra Kai. Okay, hard. But that's kind of that's what I give myself on that end, because it was, you see people in little screens, but when you see in person, we're like, oh my God, I know you, Jeremy. Like you were the CEO of United Way Merced, or you were the mayor for Coachella. Like, oh my gosh, master's program, it was mostly directors and executive managers. I was the youngest one on the block. So for me, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are accomplishing things I want to accomplish. So I was definitely LinkedIn, social media, but also asking them questions, be inquisitive, and I'll cut that right now.
Okay, so I think that, like, you guys said so many great things, so it's hard to top now or add to that. But I think being curious, not being hard on yourself, and just kind of just being kind to yourself. It's easy to say, oh my God, I should have done this. I can't believe I didn't say this. I feel so stupid. It's easy to start doubting ourselves, to put ourselves down. But you can just change the way you look at situations and think, you know what, I'm human and I'm doing such a great job. I'm working, I'm doing my best. I have all these, so many students aren't doing what I'm doing, and I'm still good. I look at the positives. Don't focus on the negatives so much, and just think like 5 years down the line, no one's going to remember that. No one's going to think, oh, just because of that one little thing that you messed up on, it changes. And the same thing, if you're working, make sure, just as and work, at your workplace, you're not always going to have everybody that agrees with you as a team player. And just like in school, sometimes, you work in teams and not everybody is agrees to what you have to say or the method you want to approach certain situations. So kind of do the best with what you have and try to find everybody's strong suits and maybe assign them stuff that they're or include everybody in what you're working on and try to motivate them, compliment them, and it makes a huge difference in the way you approach certain things and certain people. So kind of just watch how people respond and go off of that. So you don't have to use that same approach with each person. So I think developing kind of that skill is critical, and I've used that in my workplace, and it's so important. And I can't stress that enough. Having good relationships with people, adapting. You're going to have different types of bosses. So knowing what their the best style to give them information and how to prioritize your day and make it so it aligns with your boss's priorities is critical. So trying to kind of build those skill sets early on could help you later on in life. And I think that's pretty important. And like everybody else was saying, relationships, relationships, relationships. I can't stress that enough, because you will come across those people eventually, one way or another. And you want to make sure you left on a good note, or you had like something positive with that, you shared something positive with that person. So the Trojan network is pretty big, and it helps you out tremendously. My boss is a Trojan, so I know that during my interview, it was easy, because I was like, oh, you're a Trojan. I'm like, of course I am. He always says there's two types of people: those that wish they were Trojans and those that were. So it's great. So take advantage of your alumni, the Career Center, find a mentor, have people do mock interviews, have somebody look at your resume, have a fresh pair of eyes, because it really does help. So those are the things that are going to get you the job.
Okay, I think everyone had really good points. It's hard to go last. I think that the one thing that I would say is don't ever stop advocating for yourself. So there's times where things feel really, really difficult. And I know for me personally, there were a lot of times where I'm like, why am I even doing this? Like, all of this is so stressful. And it does take a whole lot of like, I gotta have some self-love right now, but you can't ever stop advocating yourself, especially at a place where a lot of the times it sometimes feels like they don't really give a, like, can I swear? They don't like really give two fucks about us sometimes as transfers. And I know that I think a lot of us have felt those sentiments. So that's what I would say. Don't ever stop advocating for yourselves.
Thank you very much. I have learned a lot from all these pieces of advice. Thank you. Okay, for the next question, I thought would be good to reverse the order. So start with Anya and then go back. Ha. Okay, so the next question is going to be, what activities were you involved in during your years at USC, and how did your involvement at school help you in your post-college path?
Cool. So of course I was involved in choir. You have to do it as part of my major. And then I was also involved in our major specific, but actually people who want to just sing but maybe can't do one of the choir times. We have this thing called BA Choral Lab. I think they renamed it to be Choral Arts Collective. But essentially it was like an undergrad where we all got to conduct and perform each other. So that was a really good professional sense where I actually got like hands-on experience in front of a choir. I was able to use it to make audition tapes and things to send to schools and etc. And then also during the first semester I was there, fall 2017, I joined TSC when Ryan, Vargas, and Veronica were in charge. And then the following year, I became president with Nick Chapman as my vice president. And then that took most of my senior year. As I'm sure Jimmy also knows, anyone, Kat, and you guys know, it takes a lot of your time, but it's definitely well worth it. So those are some of the big things I was involved in.
Very cool. So I was actually on the board for USC's Armenian Graduate Students Association, AGSA, and I later became president. So it was exciting because I got to connect with not only USC students and alumni, but also students from UCLA would come down to our events, and like all sorts of, like all schools. It was a pretty popular networking slash like we had a bunch of fundraisers, so we would have like wine and cheese night, a networking event where you got to meet fellow students, and mixers, you name it. But through that, I got to do what was kind of things that were near and dear to my heart. We got to help out orphans. We fundraised for that. We had the opportunity to donate thousands of dollars to the Bone Marrow Association. We got to send money to Armenia Fund. And I know that some of you are probably seeing a bunch of people collecting money for Armenia Fund right now with the situation going on in Armenia and Artsakh. So, I mean, we did so much, and so much good came out of our association. So I was really proud to be a part of that and to make that happen. So, and it's great because you get to see people outside of just the school. And I highly recommend you get involved with a association and just do something outside that's fun and just different, and you get to see the people in a different light. You're like, wow, you know, I never knew this about you. Or you get to learn a lot about people and establish those relationships. So I strongly recommend that, because that came in handy after graduation when I was actually looking for positions, and we got to work with some of the students, and I would send them jobs that I thought they would benefit from. They'd do the same for me. So we got to do that.
So don't take my advice, but I was not very involved. I advise you guys to be involved as much as you can. For some reason, I was not very involved. I mean, I did things here and there, like USC Pause and stuff, but it just didn't fit in my, it just didn't fit in the itinerary when I went to USC, unfortunately. But I totally advise for you guys, for rest of you transfers, to get involved. It actually did not hinder me when I was job searching because I had so much work experience. I think because prior to transferring to USC, I did a ton of jobs. I did accounting jobs. I did all these things that were already related to finance. And so when I was job searching, everyone was more focused on the fact that I had so much work experience under my belt and on my resume that they didn't care that I wasn't really involved. I mean, everyone was just was actually more amazed that I had so much job experience, and they were so excited about that than me not being involved at USC. But I don't know, I advise you guys to be active and make friends and make relationships. That I totally went the wrong way, but learn from me. That's all I have to say.
I was also, again, I have to state the disclaimer, out of the online program, I was kind of the unicorn in that I lived in Los Angeles, but did the online program where a majority of the students online were outside the city, outside the state, even outside the country. I took advantage of the Trojan fever. So with your student ID card, you have access to all sports except for football unless you pay for season tickets. You have access to attend all the games. So I took advantage of at least attending one game at least once. So each sport, baseball, you name it, like beach volleyball, basketball, like take advantage of it. So when we go back on campus, take advantage of that. For the season tickets, I purchased it. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go all in and figure out my work schedule and school schedule. And even sometimes I brought a laptop and started doing work while watching a football game, just to be part of that student section. And just, because that section is unique into it, in the LA Coliseum. That is a unique experience that I'm definitely gonna miss. But I was also part of GPAC, which is the graduate association program that for public administration, which I was the online representative trying to engage Price students to get more, if they had any labs or workshops, at least have it recorded or on video so that those that were online could at least watch it. There would at least be more engagement on the online community, which is now everyone. I was also involved with the tailgating aspect, making connections just by making friends on the tailgate side, not drinking too much, just drinking just enough to be socially accepted. Let's see, that most of my involvement came through GPAC and CMF, the City Management Fellowship. So I was an honorary on that, where they had for the Price School city managers. There are a lot of Trojan city managers. So if you're interested in government, I would highly recommend that you check CMF out. I know the chair for that, city manager Mark Alexander for La Cañada Flint Ridge, is an avid USC fan. So definitely check that out. But I think those were the activities, that and Trojan Fever. So make sure you attend games when we go back in person, or the football game coming up soon. If for your own safety, just make sure it abides by that too.
Cool. So yes, similar to Rita, I was not as involved, I'd say, socially at USC. Before I transferred to my community college, I was involved in all sort of like hobby and social clubs, things that were a little bit more community and the community oriented. When I got to USC, I kind of pivoted. I said I want to get involved in some more technical things, because there's no real opportunity to get any engineering experience at the community college that I was at. I think most community colleges tend to be that way. So I immediately started like looking for engineering clubs. I tried a couple out. I found like a family and a group at a lab called the Liquid Propulsion Lab. basically a student design group, mostly graduate students that works on like designing, building, testing, and analyzing like liquid propellant rocket engines, and like anything that supports, I guess, the testing of the engine. So various types of test stands, feed systems, all that stuff. And that pretty much like became my major extracurricular focus at USC. TSC was an awesome find. I think I randomly got an email one day while I was at Starbucks. I'm like, oh, cool, yeah, this sounds good. Let me like sign up for this, and just like met some really awesome people. Nick Chapman, like, turns out we lived like a block away from each other, and during quarantine we ended up hanging out like almost every night. I'd say like those were probably the most extracurriculars that I was involved in. Yeah, I wish I did more. So I don't really have good advice to give on this one.
So I was heavily involved during my 4 years at SC. All across my 4 years, I was participant in Marshall Business Network. So I eventually was on the executive board and served as vice president of corporate affairs, and then pioneered the advisory board for upperclassmen who had been integral to the org and no longer needed some of that foundational help, and then moved on to be able to be that link between alumni and the current students. I also was a part of fashion industry associations for 2 years, and then modeled in their annual spring fashion show 3 out of the 4 years. And I was part of the Career Advantage program through Marshall, which, if any of you are Marshall students, highly encourage you to be a part of that program, as it'll pair you and go through a very intricate mentorship mentee matching process. So my mentor is still one of my best advocates post-grad, and provides a lot of support and advice and guidance. And I was also part of Society 53. So I did that my last 2 years, and I served as executive director of recruitment. And that definitely led to me being part of the Young Alumni Council now. So now I serve on the executive board of that council, overseeing professional programming. And I was also part of the international programs in Marshall. So I did 3 different international programs. I visited Tokyo at the end of my freshman year for a Learning About International Commerce program. I did a fashion internship in Milan my sophomore summer, and then I studied abroad at Copenhagen Business School my spring semester junior year, and then served as a host for students that were coming to USC from some of our sister schools, and being able to sit on panels and provide insight to those different programs. And also served as a sort of liaison for the admissions office, and sitting on panels and hosting prospective students, and being able to share just what my student life looked like. And then was part of a Christian community all 4 years. So I did a lot. I loved everything I did. Everything served a purpose. If it didn't, then I either took a step back or had to reevaluate, but absolutely worth every bit of it. It led to really being able to take on a global mindset, being able to connect and network with individuals that were outside of my discipline, which I found very valuable, and encourage you to pursue relationships and friendships with people who are outside of your sphere of learning. And I was able to connect with people who are now still my mentors, and in programs that led me to, some of the spheres that I get to work in now. So get involved in what you can, but manage your plate accordingly, and still make time for yourself and a healthy space.
All right, I'm actually glad I went last for this one. I know who exactly of the panelists are transfers, and I know who are not, just from prior knowledge, but I'm guessing you can also guess from these answers too. So if you wanted to guess, Rita, Enya, and Nathan, they're all transfers, including myself. And that's because we were not involved. And you know why? Because we're damaged goods. Nobody wanted us to be a part of their clubs. That's kind of how Marshall felt. It was very exclusive. If they didn't know you from before, they didn't want anything to do with you. And I know Rita feels the same way, because we both came in the same year and we were pretty much friends our 2 years there. Yeah. So I said, fuck it. I said, I'm going to create a community for what I needed. And that's what the transfer student community became. And I think, yeah, everyone who's in here might be feeling a little bit of the same way, right? It's very hard to be involved when you're coming in as a junior because no one knows you. But aside from that, I was trying to, yeah, I try to do a lot of sports. I love sports, played ultimate frisbee, I boxed at USC, and just try to, get involved where I could, because I think your work experience tells people what you can do, but your volunteer and your interest section tells you who you are. So I would look for opportunities to really put on there, and just be able to tell stories about yourself when you're looking for jobs. Makes it a lot easier. I saw a need with the transfer student community, socially, professionally, just helping transfers develop. And so, I spent my 2 years there pretty much working in that the whole time. Same thing, similarly, I recently started a scholarship for transfer students, or students at my community college. Same thing, I was able to put that on my resume and just kind of really show that to, people that I'm looking, when I'm looking for a job. And I actually did switch not careers, I switched companies about a couple months ago. So if anyone is, struggling through COVID, I'd be more than willing to answer questions about, kind of how I went through that. But yeah, I'm glad some people kind of feel the same way.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for all those key points you guys mentioned. I would like to open up for questions from the audience. So if you guys want to ask a question, just unmute yourself. You can ask a question to an individual panelist or to all of them. And also, if you don't want to ask the question yourself, you can just privately message me and I'll ask the question for you. We already had one question from one of the members asking Natan what startup you were working on.
Hey, first, in order to answer that question, I need to know who asked it. I'm guessing Francesco. Anyway, it's a private jet charter aviation company. We basically are building a fleet of private jets, and we fly people around. Surprisingly, a lot of people are very interested in flying in private jets right now, and they don't want to take commercial airlines.
I asked silently so that because I know the answer. I wanted you to show off.
Was it actually you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew it.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is for Freddie. Yeah, so I'm a public policy major and I'm trying to, I'm also minoring in performance for social change. So it's kind of like a weird combo, but I'm just curious, like in the field, have you seen like these interesting combinations and like how do you see them being like applicable in that area?
For government, when you're applying, they're looking at you as a candidate. Again, there are various ways of applying getting into government. The standard administrative application that takes a while to even be reviewed, and then sometimes those unique exempt positions that come up from fellow friends or fellow Trojans that say there's an opening happening, please apply. We're just trying to get as many people, and that's actually happened before. So they want to know, do your skill sets, are you able to meet the at least the minimum standard of skill sets, because a majority of those positions within government already have the training set up to make you succeed. And again, it all hinges upon your manager and your director that will at least provide you those opportunities. But it is that, Ani, you'd probably also help me on this one too.
Yeah.
They're looking for the whole person that can complete it. So even if you have like a public policy background and then like an arts area, that's something that's unique and that makes you stand out from other applicants. But it's going to be your interview that will be the most helpful.
So I think, Freddie, right on. I think that it's important to show them that you're just very diverse, and your background's diverse, and your skills are transferable, because not everybody is going to go into government with that kind of experience. You can't get it anywhere else other than government. So that's the trickiness of it. So making sure that you're they look at emotional intelligence. Look that up if you haven't seen anybody speak about that. They want to know that you're going to be a team player. You're willing to jump from one project to another. You're just eager and willing to learn, and just go along. Like, you kind of want to do some research on the organization, and that is so important. And so many people apply for positions without knowing a thing about the department that they're applying for. And I sit on a lot of oral panel boards, and I have to say that's the biggest problem is we'll just, there's a question like, for example, okay, well, how do you see yourself, or how do your skills transfer to this position, or how do you, and sometimes we'll go off script and like define success, or what differentiates a good customer service rep from an excellent one, or just read. All of these answers are pretty much available on the city's mission, say our department's mission. Look at the budget, look at, do a quick mock interview if you have somebody, or just reach out to somebody, find somebody on LinkedIn, reach out to them and say, hey, this is a position that came up. I was hoping I can pick your brain. Do you have 10 minutes? Could I get 10 minutes of your time on, go to them with actual questions already written down, so they know you're not gonna take half their day, but those are very important to do, and showing the interviewer that you're curious, that you are willing to learn, and you just have a positive attitude, and you're just talk about how your skills can transfer to that, being successful in that particular position. And once you have those things down, I think you'll do much better during those interviews, because it could be intimidating. You do have like 3-4 people asking you questions going, and some of them not showing any emotion, just writing, so that is not where it's difficult for some. So you just have to get used to it, and once you do, you'll be more successful.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have another question. This is to all of the panelists. What were some setbacks, or I don't want to say failures, but things that you failed during the USC years, and what did you learn from it? Anyone can answer, or yeah, anyone can answer to this question.
I'll go first. As a transfer student, I know you're coming in as a junior, or typically you come in here and it's terrifying because everyone's ahead of you. Everyone already knows what they're doing. Everyone already knows fall time is the time to recruit. You don't know that. You're coming in and you're a big fish at a small pond at a community college, or wherever you came from, and now you're like a cat, like you're like the lowest on the totem pole now at this point at USC, and I was afraid. Like I genuinely didn't know. I didn't know anything. Like I was like clueless. Like when people were telling me, like my classmates were like, "Oh yeah, I'm already recruiting. I'm already interviewing," and I'm over here like, "What?" Like I'm over here trying to figure out like how not to get lost in buildings. Like how do I not like die from the heat, because I'm not used to that. Like I'm just over here trying to understand how to adapt and how to assimilate to this new place I'm in, and everyone else is like already on it. And that was one of the things I kind of like, I stumbled, and I really struggled with as being a transfer student. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, postmortem, what can I do? What am I doing that's different from other people? How can I, put myself in the game? Basically, how do you make yourself a valuable player in the game, right? Because that's how I kind of see it as it is at the end of the day. It's like, it's all a game, and it's just how are you going to be just as equally important as the next player next to you? So I immersed myself. I talked to people. I I was shameless. I asked as many questions as I can, and I jumped into it and jumped into recruiting as fast as I could. I mean, it was tough, I will say. I mean, being a transfer student, like Jimmy said, we're damaged goods, and it's tough going into something that's where you went from knowing it all and you were top of community college, and now you're kind of like a very small fish with nothing under your belt anymore. So I know it's terrifying for you guys, so that's why I'm able to relate. But that's where you guys my word of advice for you guys especially for you guys who are are in more competitive industries or more competitive majors, you got to get into it. You got to get into the game. You got to you got to step it up a little bit more. You got to catch up to everyone else. And I know it sucks to hear that, and I know that you want to be told, but that's just kind of the reality of it. And once you kind of get it, you get into a rhythm, and that's just becomes a part of you. And I think that's almost like the SE way, or at least the Marshall way, because that's just how it sculpts you. At least that's my experience. Maybe someone else will have something better and more reassuring.
I would agree with Rita that, again, unicorn here, that I was in LA, but online. So when I go on campus, no one would know me because I was online, but I'd be like, yeah, we're, MPA program. And they're like, yeah, but you're not part of our program. So that kind of disconnect, I had to quickly adapt and figure out, how can I make friends quickly through tailgating, through being as socially as possible. Like I pushed myself to be as extroverted as I could. But when it came to the barriers, or at least hard part, online program is the isolation aspect of it. Constantly knowing you have a paper due by Sunday or Friday at a certain deadline, and your only communication is via screen 24/7. And kind of my master's program prepared me for COVID, so it wasn't that much of a transition, but it allowed me to reevaluate, to reevaluate myself and how I feel, and be mindful of how I'm thinking and being present in my moment, because that at least helped me focus through my work and through my studies. So I think the barriers were trying to make sure that when I have all these deadlines, that I don't go down a rabbit hole emotionally, because everything is all digital, and that I know that I have my fellow peers. And there was this program in our online program, like a Facebook equivalent called Yammer, that you do posts and whatnot. So we would send each other little stickers or little stories or news feeds to our group, just to motivate each other. And then we'd hashtag it Team Johnny, just little things that would keep that motivation going throughout the semester. And those little things, those little comments, those little posts, those stickers, or even news feeds, that helped us as a group bond while we were digitally together. And then as we grew, because we only see each other twice in our program, the commencement, like when we start the program, and when you graduate. Those are your only two required times you'll ever see each other physically. When it came to online, it's, now you're in a group together, you're in a class, figure out ways of how to motivate each other, and, don't make sure that check your mental health part, because that's been the greatest barrier as an online student, and working those hard aspects. So please be mindful, that you're not alone in feeling that. Everyone else is going through the same experience, and just put an affirmation either to yourself or to others, because that's your team. It's literally called the Trojan family for a reason. You're a family. You might not all agree on certain things, but together, you can succeed as a group. And so the reason why that family exists like this right here, thanks to Jimmy, starting this whole thing, it's creating that bond, and I hope you take it to heart. I know I do. So when I see fellow Trojans, I'll be like, here's some resources, let's talk, let's chat, let's go over the phone. But that's to overcome the mental health barrier on an online program has been the hardest struggle. Yeah.
So I know I previously said I would have told myself to relax a little bit, but kind of what Rita said, all of you are coming in at a disadvantage. and that's just kind of factual. So if you want to stay there, that's totally fine, but you are going to have to put in the hours to really get out of that. So really just, trying to network as much as you can, trying to really get involved as much as you can. I'm kind of like losing the question a little bit, but how to overcome it, like kind of like what Freddie mentioned, out of all the panelists that I know on here, Rita's the only one I've known as a student. So keep in mind that, yeah, you're only on campus for 2 to 3 years, but you're going to be a transfer or a USC grad the rest of your life. So try to not, feel too bad about not being able to accomplish everything you want there. But also realizing what you have time for is key. Like the social aspect, your grades, and finding a job, you're not going to be able to do everything for all 3 of them. So you're really going to have to pick and choose to see what's more important for your specific path. I knew myself, like, there was no way I was going to get a full 4.0 GPA while trying to find a job. There was just no way. I mean, I'm not smart enough to do that personally. Maybe some of you guys are, but I knew the amount of hours I had, I couldn't hit everything I wanted to. So you got to really identify what's important for you guys.
Cool. I'm gonna piggyback off Jimmy and Rita, because yeah, you are at a disadvantage. There's things, and I think one of the things I had the most trouble with was the articulation process. So especially if you guys are early on in your transfer, like your first semester, if you guys are brand new to USC, get those articulations underway. I found that I actually was able to, when I first came in, I had already done, years of college, and they said, oh, you're going to have to take 4 years. And I said, what the hell? No, I'm not. So I had to go through the entire articulation petition. I had a petition, petition classes multiple times because they're like, this isn't like good enough for USC. And I'm like, it literally is the exact same class, but okay. Or like, oh, you took it in a different semester and therefore like now it counts, but it didn't count when you took it. And I'm like, that literally makes no sense, but okay. And so like just having to, again, really, really advocate for yourself and say like, no, these are things that do not make sense. Like these are policies that don't make sense. And like really just getting your shit together, which kind of sucks. Like, but you really do, like, as Rita and Jimmy have both kind of said, you got to just kind of like get your shit together. And you can either stay kind of a hot mess or you can really try and, I'm sorry guys, you all know, I was a hot mess. It's fine. We're all hot messes when we start, but you kind of got to like pick up your pieces and say, okay, like we're going to do this, we're going to go, and you need to kind of advocate for yourself and do all the things. And then, but especially the articulations, especially if you're in your first semester, you have to get those in, like, I think by December. So really, really work on those.
Can I hop in? Yeah, I'd say my biggest like setback or the biggest wake up call for me was definitely how hard the classes were. When I transferred in, I had a pretty high GPA and I was just used to doing well in classes. And it was just a lot harder at USC. And I was obsessed with this idea that I had to have A's in every single class. Like that was what defined success to me, was what letter is on my transcript, right? Did my teacher, what number do they want to come up with? Like that was like how I valued myself in this world. And I think like in hindsight, I definitely overvalued the value of a good GPA and good grades. Don't get me wrong. Like I think it's just a system that exists that we have to evaluate, how well students are learning. I think education is extremely important, and you do need a good GPA to stand out for a lot of these like resume filters or whatever. But for the most part, once you have your first job, nobody's ever going to ask you what your GPA was. Nobody is going to care. And don't take that the wrong way and think like, oh, you can slack off. But it's I think like, to me, what's more important out of to me, what's more important is like the fact that I have a relationship like with Francesco, with Kat, like with Lourdes, with Sophia, with everyone from like TSC, like spending like an hour with like each person here and like, building some sort of like shared memory together, whatever it is so much more important than like, I guess like maybe like one assignment that I may have like not done so well in a class. And I guess what I'm trying to say is just like figuring out where the balance is between getting good grades and everything else that is important in college.
Perfect. We have another question for Brianna. Which one of all your social activities at USC have been the most formative for your career?
Ooh, that is a good question. So specifically for my career, I would say it probably falls between Marshall Business Network or Society 53. So Marshall Business Network, the whole foundation of that organization is to give a wide range overview of the business industry. So doing that through professional development, corporate tours, panelists, different engagements in more of an intimate setting, but across different, sectors of the industry. So you could have someone from consulting, from entertainment, from tech, from digital media, and so on and so forth, and a variety of different roles, and being able to actually, get to know those people in these settings. So I learned a lot about what I maybe wouldn't want to do, or what I didn't even know about existed that I could potentially explore. And with Society 53, that's where I got more of those interdisciplinary relationship building. So people who weren't all Marshall students, right? Engineers, in more creative spaces, were doing other extracurricular activities that looked different from mine, and being able to network in that way, and also just deal with different personality types. Wherever you go to work, you're entering some type of team. Even if you're the only person in your department, you're now entering into a company, a brand, right? A business where there's other people that you're going to have to work with in some capacity. And you have to have, like, your IQ is important, but your EQ is even more important. Knowing who you might have to walk through something, and knowing someone else you can say, this is the task I need this done by then, and just giving it and letting them run with it, right? And knowing when you need to be a little bit more diplomatic to get your point across, and when you can just be very real with someone. So learning those skills, having been leadership roles in those groups, were very helpful, because I deal with a variety of different people in my workplace, and you can't respond to everyone the same way. You can't deal with, different work transactions the same way with everyone. So I definitely think that was the most formative, at least to lead towards my career.
Perfect. There's another question for everyone. Did you mostly make friends at your school, let's say Marshall, or spread throughout USC? Thank you for the question.
Fred.
Oh. Primarily Marshall, hence why I am here today, because Jimmy brought me on. But unfortunately, you don't really get a chance to meet that many people, because you come in, you have 2 years, and it's like 2 years, you're going to do all your core classes, and you're going to do all your major electives, and that's it, and you're done. You don't take GEs unless you put yourself out there, but you only have so much time to do stuff, right? And they only give you so many things you can do. So I only got to meet Marshall. I did some stuff, like I did small classes here and there, and I met people, and I was fortunate enough where some people were part of Greek life, and I got to meet other people, but I was very restricted because of the amount of time I was given, sadly. But my advice to you guys is get out there, because it's great to just meet different people with different perspectives. I mean, you don't want to hear, you don't want to always want to hear everything about, business. At least for me, it was nice to hear something different for once.
I would say that I made, while in school, I made friends in the Price School, because my sole focus was to get into government and be within government. But as I became an alum, my circle of friends grew to different schools, because I was part of the Young Alumni Committee. I got involved with the Young Alums. So it opened me up to other schools that, you know, I would not have gotten because I was so focused entirely. And once I graduated or while I'm in school, because I did a job transition while in my master's from being a career development coordinator, like a counselor at a school for musicians called Musicians Institute in Hollywood Highland, to working for the government, for City of LA, to Beverly Hills, and then back to the city, and then doing a stint at a nonprofit for LA Family Housing, helping house individuals experiencing homelessness. So my focus was more on policy and government. But as an alum, you know, it opened up and I made new friends like Brianna and Jimmy and, you know, and Ani. So, yeah.
So I got to meet a lot of my friends through AGSA, and it was nice because we had students from different backgrounds, different colleges. So I had a ton of people from like the dentistry school. We had some majoring in bio, and like, so it was nice to hang out with people that were just not strictly from the econ classes, because that's all we knew. If we just stayed in the class setting. But yeah, so you can definitely, and another good thing is if you are thinking about government, definitely join some of the professional associations like MMASC or MMANC. And they do have a student rates. And I mean, that is just phenomenal because you don't pay the full price. You get to network with actual government officials, and you pretty much develop your skills. And if there's an intern that they need, or if there's any job openings, you're going to be probably the first one they're going to reach out to if anything comes up. So definitely try to get yourself out there and join some of the professional associations, and not necessarily something on campus even. I know that SC has like a little group within MMASC. So we have, what is it, Freddie? It's USC, and there's another, is it Loyola, that has a booth every time. But yeah, it's like one or two others, but SC is the big one. So
yeah, Loyola Marymount.
I would definitely encourage you to join one of those professional associations as well.
And also ICMA.
ICMA.
Yeah,
yep.
They have online webinars and workshops. So
for sure. GFOA, ICMA, those are kind of the bigger ones. But to start off with, MMASC is probably more geared towards recent grads.
I would have to also say, despite not being a transfer, a good portion of my friends were in Marshall, but a lot were in other disciplines. My 3 best friends in college, one was an aerospace engineer, one was environmental science and geospatial design, and one was applied mathematics and economics. So if you want to meet people outside of your school, you have to do it with intention. And it doesn't always have to be in the form of organizations. USC has countless events, you know, speakers that come that are honestly open to usually everyone outside of whatever school or program is hosting it. And that is a great way to meet people and just show up, but also connect with people, right? Whoever you sit next to, if there's a mingling or social aspect, right? Getting out there and just, you know, putting yourself out there and getting to know other people. And those are the type of spaces that, one, will allow you to work on your networking, right? And be able to meet people outside of your school. But it really does take intention and getting out of your comfort zone and being interested in other spheres and other disciplines and other extracurricular spheres as well.
Yeah, for me, it was mostly Marshall, but kind of what Brianna and I think Nathan mentioned in the past, you know, really try to get out of your comfort zone. And I know it's hard, but, you know, that's the easiest way and the only way really you're going to meet other people. And of course, you have this great club now that you can meet everyone here in. And, you know, just want to thank all the leadership here, Maria, Francesco, Kat, Lourdes, everyone else. I mean, you guys have done an amazing job really building the club, and it's awesome just seeing how it's growing, and that's your work that I'm seeing, and it's super exciting, and I'm really proud of all of you.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. I think it's time for us to do the final few things. And thank you very much for being with us today. I'd like to ask the panelists, if you feel comfortable, please post your email address in the chat box for students to reach out in case they have more questions and they want to ask it personally. And we will also send those email addresses to the students via email later on. So yeah, this is it. Thank you very much for attending the meeting. If you have a few questions, you can stick around till 7:30 if you would like to ask it. If not, thank you for attending the meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.